What if I told you that the city that never sleeps, the concrete jungle, the capital of the world once, had a completely different name, spoke a completely different language, and was so small you could walk across it in about 15 minutes. Before the skyscrapers, before Times Square, before Wall Street became synonymous with money and power, there was a tiny Dutch settlement clinging to the southern tip of Manhattan Island. And what happened here in the 1600s set the stage for everything that followed. Let me take you back to a place called New Amsterdam and show you exactly how New York began. We're going to reconstruct this lost world using the actual maps, engravings, and written records left behind by the people who lived there. We'll stand where they stood, walk their streets, and witness the moments that transformed a trading post into the foundation of a global metropolis. Ready? Let's step back in time. Picture this. It's the early 1600s, and you're standing on the wooded shoreline of Manhattan. Tall trees press right up to the water's edge, their shadows stretching long across the ground. Small waves lap gently against the shore. The air smells of pine and salt water. And right here, at the very edge of this forest, something extraordinary is happening. Dutch traders stand beside open wooden chests. Inside, you can see metal tools, folded cloth, glass beads, small stacks of coins objects that have traveled across an entire ocean. Things that are utterly ordinary back in Europe, but immensely valuable here. Across from them, Lenape traders arrive quietly, carrying bundles of fur that have been tightly bound and carefully prepared. Beaver, otter, mink. The pelts are pristine, valuable, and represent months of skilled work. The exchange unfolds slowly, without any rush. Hence, custody goods are lifted and weighed by feel, then carefully set down again. There are no raised voices, no aggressive displays of power. For the Dutch, these furs represent profit shipments that will return to Amsterdam and fetch impressive prices in European markets. They're thinking about supply chains, about commerce, about expanding their trading network across this vast new continent. For the Lenape, though, this trade belongs to something much older, a system shaped by seasons, by reciprocity, by long-standing relationships with the land itself. They're not thinking about markets thousands of miles away. They're thinking about relationships, about balance, about what these new arrivals might mean for their world. Neither side truly understands how permanent, how transformative this moment will become. You can hear low voices speaking in Dutch and Muncie, the sound of leather shifting as goods change hands, water gently touching the shore behind them. This is where New York begins, not as a city, not even as a town, but as a transaction at the forest's edge. Now, let's rise up above the settlement itself. From the air, New Amsterdam looks almost fragile, like it might blow away in a strong wind. Wooden houses cluster together near the southern tip of Manhattan Island. The roof lines are uneven, nothing symmetrical about them. Dirt streets twist and turn without any apparent pattern or plan. Thin columns of smoke rise from chimneys, drifting slowly into the open sky above. Beyond the houses, you can see small plots of farmland, fields separated by rough fences, paths worn into the earth by countless footsteps. A few windmills turn on slightly higher ground, their motion steady and unhurried, grinding grain for the colonists below. At the water's edge, a fort anchors the entire settlement and plays a reminder that this community exists by virtue of trade and defense, not by any natural right. Nature still completely surrounds everything. The settlement hasn't reshaped the land yet. It's only adapting to it, carving out a small space in a landscape that remains overwhelmingly wild. Let's drift down to street level now, to what will eventually become one of the most famous streets in the entire world, Wall Street. But in the 1600s, this isn't a center of wealth or financial ambition. It's literally just what it sounds. Like a wall, a wooden defensive barrier stretches across the island, marking the northern boundary of the town. It was built for protection, not appearance. On one side, you've got homes and narrow streets. On the other, open wilderness. A Dutch man is fixing a paper notice to a tree beside the wall. It announces the boundary, explains the rules, marks where the town officially ends. A few men stop to read it. Others glance as they pass. Already familiar with what it says, this is how information moves in New Amsterdam slowly, physically. Not shouted to crowds, but literally nailed into the landscape itself. The road here is quiet and uneven. A few modest buildings stand close together. People walk at a relaxed pace, pause briefly to exchange a few words, then carry on with their business. Life here follows daylight and weather, not profit margins or urgent deadlines. There's absolutely no sense of the future importance this street will have. Just caution, practicality, and the daily rhythm of colonial life. Now we arrive at the beating heart of the Colonial, docks belonging to the Dutch West India Company. Ships sit low in the water, tied to wooden piers that have been worn smooth by years of constant use. Sailors move between decks and warehouses with practiced efficiency, lifting crates, coiling thick rope, checking cargo carefully. Heavy barrels roll across the planks with that distinctive rumbling sound. Chains clink. Orders are spoken briefly, without any flourish or drama. This is the engine that drives the entire colony. Sugar, fur, timber, manufactured goods from across the Atlantic, all passes through these docks. Each shipment ties this tiny settlement to distant ports in Amsterdam, London, the Caribbean, West Africa. The sound here never fully stops. It's work without ceremony, a harbor connecting a small frontier town to a vast global trading system that is reshaping the entire world. Let's move out onto the water itself for a moment. Small boats glide past, their hulls cutting quietly through the dark river water. Reflections ripple and break beneath them. In the distance stands Fort Amsterdam, solid, completely unadorned. Cannons face outward toward the harbor, guarding against potential threats from the sea rather than from the town itself. The fort isn't meant to impress anyone. It's meant to endure, to project strength, to remind everyone that this place exists by permission of trade and military power. Follow me now along the canal that will one day become Broad Street. Water runs through the center of this thoroughfare, dark and slow. Small boats are drawn up alongside warehouses where load and unload goods directly through doorways that open onto the water. Sacks are carried, crates are stacked, hands are always busy. This canal functions as a working streeted transport and commerce, combined into one clever piece of urban design that the Dutch have perfected back home in Amsterdam. You can hear water lapping against wood, footsteps on planks, short, efficient exchanges between laborers. The movement here is steady, necessary, completely unremarkable. This is the unglamorous work that keeps a colony functioning. Now we arrive at the market, and suddenly the settlement feels properly alive. You've got merchants, laborers, entire families doing their shopping together. Voices overlap in multiple languages. Children weave between adults, playing games and getting underfoot. Bargaining rises and fades in a constant rhythm. This is a small town learning how to function as something bigger, something more complex. The market is where different cultures collide, where the colony's diversities becomes most obvious and most vibrant. Nearby, there's an open green space that breaks up the density of the settlement. People walk through it, pause to rest, gather briefly before moving on with their business. Children play whilst adults talk quietly nearby. This space offers something genuinely rare in colonial life: room to breathe. A bit of shared common ground within a growing town that's becoming increasingly crowded. Let's jump to winter now. Snow covers the ground, softening every sound, muffling the usual noise of the settlement. Families gather outside a building, marking the arrival of a new year, according to the Dutch calendar. Men, women, and children stand together, all bundled up against the bitter cold. There's no grand spectacle, no elaborate ceremony beyond simply being together. You can see their breath rising into the frozen air. Laughter appears, then fades. This is everyday joy, quiet, deeply human. The kind of moment that happens in every community throughout history. Now, we need to talk about the man who presided over the end of New Amsterdam. He was the last Dutch governor, and quite a character. Stuyvesant ruled with iron discipline and absolute certainty in his own authority. He believed strongly in order, in hierarchy, in doing things the proper Dutch way. Under his leadership, the colony expanded and became more organized. But divisions also deepened between Dutch and English residents, between different religious groups, between the governor and the increasingly independent-minded colonists. Then, in 1664, English warships appeared in the harbor. The colonists looked at Stuyvesant, expecting him to organize a defense. But there was a problem. The fort was in terrible condition. The ammunition was insufficient. Let me take you inside a Dutch colonial tavern for a moment. Men sit at wooden tables that have been worn smooth by years of use. They drink locally brewed beer, talk, argue, and listen to the latest gossip and news. Clay pipes glow softly in the dim light. Pewter mugs are lifted and set down again with satisfying thuds. Taverns are where news actually spreads in this pre-newspaper world, where public opinions take shape and solidify. This is where public life continues after the workday ends. It's where sailors tell stories, where merchants complain about taxes, where ordinary colonists debate the decisions being made in the fort. These taverns are more important to the colony's political life than you might think. So there you have it. New Amsterdam was small, practical, rough around the edges, and perpetually unfinished. But within this modest Dutch trading post were the foundations of what would become one of the most important cities in human history. The religious tolerance, or at least pragmatic acceptance of diversity that would define New York's character, was already present. The commercial drive, the constant flow of goods and people from around the world, the mixing of cultures and languages, was all there from the very beginning. If you enjoyed this journey back to the 1700s and want to see another city reconstructed from its forgotten past, there's plenty more incredible stories waiting to be told.